SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Will East in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning there, Will.
Good morning. It's a cold one.
It is.
And the parking lot is
it's empty.
Sparse.
Oh, so are the roads, by the way,
yes.
and it's just driving around. The shops, the restaurants don't seem to be as buzzing as they typically are. That is, of course, because today is a holiday. It is the day in which we recognize and remember Martin Luther King Jr., who taught us that justice requires building community. I just got to say something here, Will, because it's MLK Day. We need leaders again, like MLK, honestly, that were able to sort of transcend all the demographics with, I think, a very effective and meaningful and high-quality message. And it's good that we take a day off and reflect on the work he did really very effectively and very successfully to achieve racial equality in this country. And I know there's always a lot of talk about racial inequality, but you know what we don't do? We never talk about the victories. We just, that doesn't get the attention. The only thing that gets the attention, right, are all the failures, if you will. Well, what some people deem to be failures. A lot of times that's just made up and falsified just to advance an agenda. Look in our own state here, where we are now versus where we were. I remember just growing up, in Mississippi in the 60s and 70s. It's a different state with respect to race relations and racial harmony. We don't take enough time to recognize that, in my view. We don't. In many cases, in many circles, many people don't even accept or acknowledge. They still want to put us back in 1860, it feels like.
Yeah.
Man, we, as I've said so many times, we've had to figure it out in Mississippi because of the composition of our population.
The most diverse state.
Yeah, right. So no other state has such a small disparity, a small delta between the major races, as does Mississippi. We're, roughly 60-40, roughly. Mm-hmm. No other state comes even close to that. So we kind of had to figure it out because you can't hide. We got to live with each other. And I think, does that mean we're perfect? No. That we don't have issues? No. Have we come a long way? Heck yeah. A long way. I think about just my own personal situation. I'm super blessed. I live in an upscale neighborhood. I want to apologize for that, by the way. Right next to me. Yeah. A beautiful black family. Right next to me. In an upscale neighborhood, a gated community, in an area that you wouldn't have even thought about that happening a short 30, 40 years ago, perhaps. We're so far past that. Both of the children, I know because they put signs in the yards sometimes around homecoming or other events happening at their school. Both children attend what I think is the most expensive private school in the state. You know what I'm talking about. Not far from where I live there. So, bravo. That's great. I'm only saying that if things are so bad, if there's so much suppression and oppression based on race, how did they get there? Something must be happening right. And again, that's not to say we can check the box. Of course not. We're flawed humans. We know that. We're constantly working to improve. But, man, it's always the old glass half empty approach. And never, it seems to me, do we recognize what I call the everyday victories. Yeah. From a racial perspective. I wrote an article about this several years ago, and it was, I forget the name of the individual. You may remember the youngster in Florida, young black kid. It was during the Obama. Trayvon Martin. Yeah, that's it. So, and that was taking the country by storm. Very controversial, and I think it kind of sparked a lot of conflict. And I was just thinking about, well, gosh, that gets all the news. And I'm not saying that wasn't newsworthy, but every single day, right here in my home state, in the state of Mississippi, I observed what I called everyday race victories. And I tell you what happened. Well, right after that happened, I was on an airplane traveling for business. And it was the commercial aircraft had the 3-seat configuration out of Jackson, 1 seat by the window, 2 on the other side of the aisle, an aisle, and a window seat. And I just happened to notice that there was 2 gentlemen older than me, I would say probably late 60s, early 70s, black man, white man. And they were sitting next to each other and having a conversation. And it sounded like any other conversation. They were talking about their work and their retirement and their kids and their grandkids. And I'm thinking, well, we got all this Trayvon Martin stuff that's taking our country's media, just consuming it, and we're so focused on that, and it's sparked, I would say, racial strife. But then, right behind them, never forget this, was another elderly white man sitting next to a young black female. She had never been on an airplane. She was scared. Of course, I think most people would say, first time you fly, you don't know what to expect. You're a little freaked out by it. And she was visibly shaken about it. So we taxi out to the runway, and of course they put the juice to it. And it pushes you back in your seat, and you're like, oh my gosh, what's next? Yeah. And you're grabbing onto most people out there that have flown can remember back to their first time. They probably had the same experience, and they're clutching the seats, that they can, the armrest there typically. And I never forget, I looked out of the corner of my eye, and this older white man put his hand on the knee of that young lady to comfort her. Yeah. Through the process. It's going to be okay. Now, is that an everyday race victory? I think it is, honestly.
It wouldn't have happened.
That's the point.
50 years ago?
That's the point. So, again, does that mean, problem solved, we're done? No. It's just that never gets reported. So I decided to write about that. Yeah. And it turns out that the day before, I remember walking in, I don't know why this happened in a compressed period of time, these experiences, walking in a restaurant here in Ridgeland. And I just remember a young black family with one in hand, child, and the other in a stroller. And they were walking in the restaurant. And a man was just ahead of them, and he held the door open, white man, for them, of course. Common courtesy to get in, and with the very precious cargo, of course, their children. And he stepped back and allowed them to order before him at the counter. That's not a big deal. I mean, that's just common courtesy, and basically said, no, this is more important. You're trying to feed your kids here. Yeah. And again, that's another situation that won't make the news headlines. I get it. But this stuff happens every day. Happens in our country, happens in our state, happens in our communities. We can all point to these situations. But that doesn't get the news.
No.
But crazy stuff does, and it gets blown up way beyond what it is. And again, I'm not suggesting here that we don't still have work to do. We are flawed humans. If you believe in God and you believe in biblical principles and doctrine, pretty much we're told that you've got to constantly work on this. And then I think about the founders of this great country that advised us, you're going to constantly be seeking a more perfect union. And this is, I think, part of that. It's an element of that. But gosh, man, we've made a lot of progress. But I just thought that was appropriate to talk about here on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, who I think, honestly, would be appalled at what he would see in this country and the way the whole issue of racism has been hijacked. And I think that he would say, no, that's not what I was talking about here. So we should take stock in what he said and try to live our lives in accordance with many of the principles that he promoted. We're stepping aside for a break. We've got Christina Dent, founder and president of End It For Good at 11:05. Stay with us.
Amy Cox.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
So we had somebody on the C Spire text line, that's 601-879-4395, point out that Martin Luther King Jr. was indeed a flawed human as well. I appreciate that, but I don't think that nullifies the fact that his message in many senses was on point. And that I think he did change the trajectory of this country for the better. So I'm not excusing whatever were his indiscretions, and I think we could make the same contention about a lot of high-profile leaders. They're not perfect either. They've got their baggage as well. I think you've got to look at a scorecard and see, did you do more good than you did bad? At the end of the day, I happen to believe that's what the good Lord thinks about when our time comes to potentially pass through the pearly gates of heaven. Is, overall, did you do good? Because we all sin. We're all going to do things that are against his teaching, his will. You just hope you do more good than bad at the end of the day, what it comes down to. So, but I appreciate that. Today, Will, by the way, is considered Blue Monday. Blue Monday.
Why is it Blue Monday?
It is considered that the third Monday in January is known as the saddest day of the year, often referred to as Blue Monday. Introduced by a UK travel company as part of a marketing ploy, doctors, however, say that there is some truth behind why people feel down this time of year. It's cold. Fortunately here, it's sunny, and that makes you a little cheery, I guess, than if it were,
it's not dreary.
Yeah, wet. But, the other thing to combine with the weather is the financial burden left over from the holidays.
That, and then you've probably got, in addition to that, you've probably got somebody who decided to diet at the beginning of the year, and they're feeling a little hangry maybe. They've been having to work out to keep this resolution going. You got, you had all these events and all these things happening at the holidays, and now all of a sudden it's back to normal.
You're actually spot on. It turns out that besides the weather and the bills coming due from the holidays, that the resolutions are starting to go by the wayside. That is exactly what is thought to be the third of the three major underpinnings of why it is considered Blue Monday. Doctors say if your symptoms linger for more than a few weeks or if family and friends are noticing changes in your behavior, might need to get some professional help. Well, hang in there because spring's right around the corner is the way I look at it. Certainly we've already crossed the equinox, so the days are lengthening just a tad. You can tell that.
Yeah. I would say another thing, especially if you're an American male, the amount of football games is starting to dwindle down every single Sunday. We had 4 games this weekend. You'll only have 2 next Sunday, and then I think a Pro Bowl or something like that. Nobody watches that. And then Super Bowl, and then that's it.
That's it. Yeah. You're right. Of course, we got the national championship tonight.
Yep.
And that's a little unusual, falling on a holiday. Just seems a little weird to me. I don't know that I could remember when the two have coincided. Maybe so in the past. I hadn't looked it up. But just thinking about the holiday and that many of the banks, financial institutions, markets, this place here where we are, closed down today.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I don't know, getting ready for the game, I guess. I think all eyes will be on the game. They'll have a big viewership, especially with a team that hadn't been there in a long time and one that I don't know has ever been there, right? Indiana.
Never. They are one of the worst all-time football teams in Division I, I believe.
Yeah.
And so it's been an incredible story, and I think a lot of America is rooting for Indiana, this kind of underdog who has never had a chance before. I think a lot of people are rooting for him, and they like the coach too, I think.
Yeah.
He wins. He wins. You can Google him. That's what he says.
He wins. That's right. So here's something that you folks can cheer up about is refunds, your tax refunds. I'm curious, has anybody done their tax returns yet? I got to tell you, I helped. I shouldn't say that. I was advised by someone that, hey, I just did mine, used TurboTax and plugged all my data in. Man, I'm pretty excited I'm getting this refund. So this individual works significant overtime hours. This is a concern I have in that only the premium portion of your overtime pay is eligible for the above-the-line deduction in accordance with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, also known as the Working Families Tax Cuts Act. Only the premium portion. Now, here's the problem. Your W-2 doesn't have that. There's no spot on their W-2 that says, here's the premium portion of your overtime. So, an employer may provide that, although this would be unusual in all my years of implementing payroll systems, on your year-end sort of pay statement.
Yeah.
But typically, and you'd have to check, right? Like most people do today, have access to their an HR tool that has all the information associated with their employment, including every paycheck, because it's all, for the most part, electronic now. Most companies don't send out paper checks, as was the case in the old days. It's electronically deposited, or it's cash. And in the electronic deposit, you have to go look it up. Now, I remember, back when I was younger, when this whole idea of electronic deposit first came onto the scene as a young employee, you would get the stub in the mail. And even in my company, we would mail the stub to their home.
I remember getting those.
Okay. So that, no more, right? Because now we all have access to these online tools. You want to know what your paycheck consisted of? Just log on. Why spend the money on producing a stub, putting it in an envelope, and mailing it out? That makes sense. So you'd have to go look at that to see, does it have just a premium portion? Typically, it would have overtime pay segregated.
Mm-hmm.
Here's your gross pay. Here's your overtime, your base, your overtime. But the premium portion, I've never seen that. I haven't checked ours to see, for example, if something, if a field, a column exists where it provides that information. I haven't seen that. So here's the point I'm making. a bunch of people are going to screw this up inadvertently. Now, I'm not saying they're intentionally trying to boost their refund, but they're going to do it inadvertently because the first, as you know, the vast majority of people just hear the government and the politicians say your overtime pay is deductible, except it's not. Only the premium portion is. And all that simply means is if you make $10 an hour, but when you work overtime you make $15, it's the $5 an hour that's deductible. The 10 is not. It's subject to the full.
Devil's in the details. Yeah. It always is.
But the politicians don't say that because that don't sound as good, right? Yeah. So they'd rather your overtime's deductible. No tax on overtime. That's what they say.
And I'm gonna tell you, I've got not friends and everybody who's working a lot more overtime because these companies can't find people that are qualified.
Yeah.
People don't work like they used to. That's the old saying. So they're working a lot more hours, and they want to.
Right.
They want to.
Yeah, sure. And make more money.
I mean, wouldn't you rather, pay somebody who's good versus having to bring in somebody who might be
heck yeah.
average or below average?
I would argue that the overtime pay, the premium you're paying for the overtime work there is less costly than bringing on somebody else. Right?
I mean, you got to onboard them and all this kind of stuff.
Expensive.
So I would imagine a lot more Americans, and plus too, Gerard, they've really cracked down on who qualifies for overtime. That has changed with electronic stuff. That has changed over the past 10 years. There's a lot more rules now, and so I think the people that qualify for it there's a lot more of them out there. And so I wonder, too, if people are going to get the checks in the mail or get their deposits and go, "Oh, I thought it was going to be a lot higher than that."
It's I looked it up. It's roughly 8% of the workers in this country earn some amount of overtime. Mm-hmm. But that's still a lot of people. The only point I'm making is when they go plugging that data in, those tax preparation tools online, they're probably not going to enter the premium portion.
Because it's not there on the...
Right, yep. Right. And so they're going to end up getting a higher refund. And here's the problem. If the IRS figures that out and comes calling, then you may be in a situation where you got to repay some. Oh, my gosh. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
We've sent that Rip Van Winkle.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. So I'm looking at the W-2 form, and I'm trying to see where maybe it does have that broken out. Somebody on the C Spire text line said they do, but I'm missing it. I don't see it. I'm looking at W-2 right now. So as far as the premium portion of overtime, I have to keep looking. I mean, it makes sense that would be a requirement, totally, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to do your tax return correctly if you earn overtime pay. So I need to check it out. That would be for 2025, of course, because it is effective. Goes into effect. Now, I'm looking at another report here. So it's a lot of conflicting information. It says FLSAOT Premium Box 14. Okay, good. I'm glad to know that. And that is from the IRS site. But in looking at numerous other images of the 2025 W-2, I don't see it. But we shall see. I just hope that is the case. that this information is provided correctly. Just looking at who's eligible and who's not here. So, but that's the way it works. And on the C Spire text line, somebody said, box 14 on W-2. That's what I'm seeing as well in this overview, but I'm looking at the form, and I don't see it. So I'll keep looking. But good. It should be. I mean, you got to believe that they'd. Yeah, I tell you what. I see it now, Will. It's in a box marked as other.
Other.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, that makes sense. So that's why I didn't see it, because I didn't know it would be produced and printed in the other box. Someone else on the C Spire text line says, as a truck driver, we don't get overtime. I work 60, 70 hours a week. Yeah, I understand. So the problem I have, I don't know if I'd call it a problem, but when the politicians boast about this, you've heard it, Will, no tax on overtime, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security. Not true. The premium portion of your overtime is an above-the-line deduction.
Yes.
Your tips also. Now, that doesn't effectively exempt them from taxes, but it doesn't affect your withholdings. You'd have to go work that out with your employer to adjust your withholdings, because this is something that you're going to square up when you do your tax return, and you deduct your overtime, your premium overtime, your tips, if you qualify. And then, of course, there are some limitations, although I think most people would meet those limitations that do earn tips overtime. Tips is $25,000. It doesn't matter whether you file as individual or joint, and your adjusted gross income has to be below $150,000. It starts phasing out after that as an individual. $300,000 for a joint. Overtime, it's $12,500 if you're single, $25,000 if you're married. And then it's the same rules with respect to income eligibility, $150,000 for single individual taxpayers, and then $300,000 for joint taxpayers. And there also, you can deduct, of course, this is one reason that refunds will be boosted. You can deduct automobile interest, up to $10,000 of automobile interest, if your vehicle was a new one, a U.S. assembled vehicle, and you bought it between 2025 and 2028. Okay, so it's not that if you bought that vehicle prior to 2025 and you've got a loan on it and you're paying interest, you don't get to deduct that. You would have had to have purchased it between 25 and 28. And speaking of 28, that's something else to keep in mind. These tax goodies of deductibility of premium overtime, deductibility of tips, deductibility of auto interest, the boost in the state and local tax from $10,000 deduction from $10,000 to $40,000, all expire at the end of 28. So these are all temporary. And you know what will happen, Will? They'll be arguing about this in the Congress when those are all scheduled to expire. And you may ask, why didn't they make that permanent? Why do they have to make it complicated? It all goes back to the math. You've got to have 60 votes in the Senate to pass legislation to make it permanent. Otherwise, you're subject to the reconciliation process. Legislation can be passed if it's budgetary related, such as tax provisions, with a simple majority, but you got all kinds of parameters and rules around that the parliamentarian has to weigh in on and say, yeah, that's eligible for passing with a simple majority. And typically there's some economic and mathematical calculations, and what they have to do is cut those things short.
Whenever you get the parliamentarian involved, you know you're having some fun.
That's right.
Let's call a parliamentarian.
Exactly. Mike and Richard asks a good question. I apologize if I'm being confusing about this, Mike. Thank you for this question. He says, you keep saying premium overtime. Is that different from just regular overtime? Do you have to get so much overtime before it's counted? Good question. No. So what I mean is, it's the additional amount per hour your employer pays when you're working in an overtime situation. The additional amount per hour. So again, simple example, if you make $10 an hour, that's your standard pay. But when you're working overtime, you make $15 an hour. It's the $5 per hour, whatever that math is, number of hours times $5. That's the amount that's deducted, not the full $15 per hour, just the $5 per hour. That's referred to as the premium portion of your overtime pay. You're getting paid a premium more because you're working overtime. So, let's see, on the C Spire text line, that's where I took the bait on the no tax on overtime. You're still taxed for your regular rate no matter if you worked 80 hours. Correct. So let's say if you worked 80 hours in a week, your standard week is 40. You work another 40 hours. That's a lot, of course. 40 hours times your standard hourly pay is still subject to the full amount of tax. It's the 40 hours times the additional rate per hour your employer pays you. That can be deducted from your pay before you then fill in your tax return and calculate your taxes. It's just that additional amount you're paid while you're working overtime. What's the income limit for OT premiums to be tax-free, says Thomas. No such thing, Thomas in Greenwood. I don't know what you mean by tax-free. They're not exempt from taxes. They're deductible from your gross pay. There is a difference. It may work out to be the same mathematically, but it's what's called an above-the-line deduction. If you think about your tax return, you plug in your gross pay, and then you've got some adjustments to your gross pay to arrive at what's called your adjusted gross income, AGI. Overtime is used to reduce your top-line gross, the premium portion, tips, automobile interest, all that goes up there before you get to your AGI, and then you have your standard deduction that reduces it further, and then you calculate your taxes. So that's how it works. So there's no income limit, although the deducted didn't mean to have tax class here, but it is important because people are doing their taxes now, Will, and this is all new. This is the time of year you start getting all those documents from your employer, of course, and everybody else that has to send you documents, 1099s and statements and so forth that you need to do your tax return. And so, the limits, Thomas, $150,000 for a single, $300,000 for a couple filing a joint return. Those are the two figures that anything below that, you are allowed the full deduction of your premium overtime, the full deduction of your tips up to the limit of those figures. Above that, it starts phasing out. It just means you deduct a lesser amount of it is all that means. So,
and speaking of taxes and the biggest political issue in Mississippi this year, Governor Reeves, some news today.
Yeah, he did. This is literally hot off the press while we're sitting here. He just signed off on Mississippi's participation in the tax credit scholarship program that was created in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. This is something we talked about, Will, on the program right after the bill passed, but actually I remember having the Speaker of the House, Jason White, in the Element Well studio. We ran it by him and said, hey, do you think that we're going to opt in, because the way the law is structured, states have to opt into the program. What wasn't clear at the time was, okay, does opting in mean the governor can do it just with an executive order from the executive branch, or does it require the legislature to pass some? Apparently in Mississippi, our governor has announced today that Mississippi has been opted in to the federal tax credit scholarship program. On the other side of the break, we'll explain what that means. It's very timely given the school choice debate that's occurring down in Jackson. Stay with us from the Element Well studio.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
You never take advice.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Thanks for joining us. So much to get to today, Will, but we got a 2-hour show. SuperTalk Outdoors with Ricky Matthews comes your way at 12:05. Before we went to break, we're just talking about, it's hot off the press, literally, January 19th. Governor Reeves just released a statement indicating that Mississippi will, in fact, opt in to the federal tax credit scholarship program that was created as part of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act signed into law, I believe it was last July. And so here's all this means, that taxpayers in the state of Mississippi can contribute $1,700 to what the bill defines, Will, as a scholarship granting organization, an SGO. And the SGO then, with those funds donated by taxpayers, would dole them out to scholarship recipients that parents could use to direct to the education setting of their choice, such as a private school or homeschooling, micro school. Those are the typical situations outside of a public school. And so the $1,700 is eligible for a dollar-for-dollar tax credit. Right now it's called a non-refundable tax credit, and all that really means is that when you do your tax return and you calculate how much taxes you owe before you look at what you've paid in during the year, just here's what your tax liability is, you would be able to take a credit up to $1,700 off of that liability to determine whether or not you owe the IRS more money or it owes you. So it's a dollar for dollar. Bottom line is, you give $1,700 to one of these SGOs, federal government's giving you $1,700 back. So I think it's a good deal. And this is timely, as I said, because we got this school choice debate that has really ignited quite the firestorm on social media over the weekend. I spent a lot of time just observing more than anything else, and occasionally when questions would come up in threads, I would just very respectfully answer those questions because, as you know, so much misinformation, so much misunderstanding. Yeah. I really think that proponents of this program could have helped the chances of getting this thing through the Senate now. It's passed the House by the slimmest of margins, and up to the governor's mansion for Governor Tate Reeves to enact it. Had they spent some time educating folks, and what I mean by that is maybe it made sense to hold town halls, Will, across the state, with people that understand the policy and could discuss it, could answer questions, because there's just, again, so much, I'm not even going to say misinformation as much as it is misunderstanding, but no surprise that the Mississippi Democratic Party, they issued a press release about it. Of course, they vehemently oppose school choice, and they make it clear that, yeah, we support giving families options, but when it comes to diverting public dollars to private schools, they oppose that. They also say public support drops sharply when that's the situation. So there's some degree of support for public-to-public transfer, but far less support for public monies being diverted to private schools for a child's education. But I guess what's coming out through all of this is very little concern for parents and families, and way more concerns for public school systems. And they, of course, say that what we need is more money going to those schools. But that's always been, their position. Let's give them more money. And they also, this really disappoints me, they call out lobbyists that are making money to support these policies. Are they kidding me? Do they not think that they're lobbyists that are being paid by their side in that Capitol? A whole lot more, honestly, that got paid to oppose it. Have they not been to the Capitol and seen who's in the files there?
Oh, they
Will?
have. It's selective seeing.
Okay. So
it's the one hand over the eye,
right
over here.
So I got to tell you, there's people out there that are exposing my good friend Grant Callen, who is the chairman of the president, CEO of Empower Mississippi, arguably the state's leading advocate of education freedom. Yeah, he gets paid a salary for that work by private people who believe in that work, like me, who give a bunch of money to that organization that pays his salary among the salaries of the others and the other activities. And I will say they have listed the board members, including me, at zero, which is correct. This is an all-out, none-in. I do it because I believe in the policy, not because I'm getting paid somehow for this. We're going to step aside for a break. Christina Dent joins us after Fox News and SuperTalk News from the Element Wealth Studio. Of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays on this Monday. Once again, it is a 2-hour show. We've got Ricky Matthews, Super Talk Outdoors, coming on at 12:05 today, MLK Junior Day, and the parking lot's kind of empty, but we got Christina Dent in today, founder and president of End It for Good. Thanks for coming in, Christina.
Thanks, Gerard. Great to be back.
So tell the folks again exactly what the organization that you founded, that you lead there, what's your mission, what do you do?
Yeah, we're a Mississippi-based nonprofit that advocates for health-centered approaches to drugs and addiction, shifting away from the criminal justice system as one of the primary tools that we use in really addressing drug use and addiction as a health issue.
So you've got Recovery Day, right, coming up this Thursday.
Yes.
January the 22nd. So this is, of course, consistent with the mission of End It for Good. What do you have planned then?
We are super excited. We will be at the Capitol, and this is open to everyone. It is not just for people who are in recovery. Recovery Day at the Capitol is open to anyone who wants to see more Mississippians finding and achieving long-term sobriety.
Okay.
And people can come. We have breakfast. They can come for registration starting at 8:30 and get breakfast. They'll be introduced in both chambers. We have a press conference at 11:30. And then we're very excited and so thankful because Half Shell Oyster House in Madison is donating lunch.
Oh, wow.
So if you want to come out for a great lunch, come for if you can only come for a little while, come for the press conference. It's inside the Capitol on the second floor, Rotunda Steps at 11:30. And then join us for lunch at catered by Half Shell.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Need to sign up online for that to make sure we've got enough lunch for everybody. You can do that at enditforgood.com/events. Go ahead and sign up, but you don't have to sign up if you just want to drop by the day and be part of it. We've got over 100 people registered so far. It's going to be a really, really fun day, really great day just to celebrate the good things that are happening related to recovery in Mississippi.
And get some good food. It's good,
yes.
Good restaurant. Really cool multi-purpose development right there in Madison as well. Kudos to the mayor. I know she was instrumental in that, Mary Hawkins Butler, to getting that development going. So, all right. So what are you working on this session legislatively?
Yeah, we're really interested in Representative Sam Creekmore has a bill related to the psychedelic ibogaine to come alongside some other states that are working on getting an FDA trial phase 1 completed and potentially for breakthrough therapy status for ibogaine. It's a really unique. If you haven't heard of psychedelic-assisted therapy, it sounds kind of crazy. But the more you look into it, it is really astonishing how many people are finding healing, not just from addiction, but also from PTSD, from traumatic brain injuries. It's being used and tested for things like Parkinson's, just Alzheimer's. It's really interesting what the potential is. It is not for everyone. You need to be screened. It needs to be given under health conditions in a healthcare facility. But Representative Creekmore has really gotten interested in what are innovative pathways to recovery that we don't have yet.
Okay.
And, if we want to see better outcomes, we're going to have to put some new tools in the tool belt. And this could be one of those tools. Right now, Ibogaine is Schedule 1. You cannot get Ibogaine treatment anywhere in the U.S. And we have thousands of people every year that are traveling out of the country to get Ibogaine treatment. And we don't want that to be the case. We have a significant challenge with addiction in Mississippi. About 385,000 people struggle with substance use disorders in Mississippi.
Too many.
And we don't want them to have the resources to go out of the country to get treatment that could be available right here in state.
And we should point out, Representative Creekmore, of course, chairs the Public Health Committee.
Yes.
This would be right up his alley here,
Yep.
the subject matter. So, I've always understood, and I know you are heavily invested in this, intellectually speaking, that addiction is kind of a short circuit to a great extent in the brain, that there's just sometimes imbalances of certain chemicals that it actually can be treated. And there's lots of new drugs coming onto the market that are designed specifically for that, and they're showing lots of success.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Our health department here in Mississippi actually has a program called the MSUD program. And if you are struggling with an opioid addiction in Mississippi, you can go to or call your local health department, tell them you're interested in the MSUD program, stands for Medications for Substance Use Disorder, and they will connect you to the incomparable Brenda Foster, who leads all sorts of amazing things in Mississippi related to substance use disorder. And they can get you on medication for addiction treatment for an opioid addiction.
Okay.
It's really incredible. And, I'm a small government person. I want, less tax dollars out there in the world. And yet we are either paying for this on the back end, in the criminal justice system, if people get arrested and have all the court costs, or if they go to the emergency room, or there are so many back-end costs to addiction, foster care, all sorts of ways that taxpayers are paying. And this is a way on the front end that we can keep someone stable. When they're on medication, they can go to work, they can parent, they can be healthy and stable and building their life. It's a great investment on the front end to help more people not live in that chaos, and for their families and communities to live also in that chaos of active addiction. Christina
Dent, founder and president, End It for Good, our guest. So talk about the reforms we need in Mississippi, because my understanding is, Christina, many of our laws just lock people up, and they get locked up in institutions that don't really help them and address their problem. And so when they serve their time and they're released, same problem, and they often end up committing the same crimes that got them locked up to start with.
Right. In Mississippi, we still have about 20,000 drug-related arrests every year. There's about 4,000 people in prisons who are there on a nonviolent drug charge in Mississippi. That's about 1 out of every 5 people in prison in Mississippi. This isn't to say that every single one of those shouldn't have happened. But it is to say, perhaps, if we still have 385,000 people struggling with a substance use disorder, with lots of people using drugs, this system that we have used for decades of trying to scare people out of substance use and trying to make their life painful enough that they don't go back to it, it has not produced the results that we want. Even on the way here, I was actually on the phone with someone who's trying to help a young pregnant mom who has a felony. And she's struggling with an opioid addiction. They're trying to help her get treatment and under the care of a doctor. And she's calling places, and the mom says, nowhere will call me back. I want to work, but I have a felony. They will not call me back. I have heard that over and over and over again. I've probably in the last month had 4 or 5 calls from people saying, my son has a felony. We're walking with him. He's doing the work. He's applying. He's doing the follow-up. No one will call him back. And I know we have second chance employers in Mississippi, but there is a lot of understandable hesitation from hiring, depending on what field you're in, what type of workers that you're
Sure.
dating, what you can trust people with. So can we, on the front end, not saddle so many people with a criminal conviction that then is this lifelong challenge to try to overcome in a state that already has a workforce participation challenge? This is one way that we can address multiple problems at the same time by shifting that approach towards a health-centered approach. And that's what we're doing on Thursday. Come out and celebrate with us at Recovery Day at the Capitol. It's going to be a really positive, uplifting, encouraging event because even with all of the challenges we do have a lot to be grateful for, including declining overdose death numbers. That's a huge win. We have fewer people dying every year of an overdose. That's great.
Well, there's no doubt it's an economic drag, and the current system, it just feels like needs reforms. I just don't know that we're actually accomplishing anything for society to just lock people up because they have a drug addiction, and especially when they're not able to access the kind of rehabilitation that they need to return them to society as productive members.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I hope people hear the most is think about what the ultimate goal is. What is the goal related to drugs? Isn't it to reduce harm to society, to a person's life, to their family? If what we're doing is not reducing harm, and in some ways it's actually increasing harm, making it more difficult for people to get a job, to raise their children, to be able to find a place to live and provide for themselves, then that's not producing the goal. It might feel like we're making a point. It might feel kind of like the righteous thing to say you shouldn't be doing this and we're going to punish you if you do. Yeah. But is it actually accomplishing the goal of a healthier, more prosperous Mississippi? I think the objective facts say no, that is not what we're getting. And can we approach a health condition with a health solution?
Before you go, are you optimistic about getting something done in the legislature this year?
I'm so optimistic about it. I have talked to so many people in and outside of the legislature who are interested in removing barriers to addiction treatment.
Gotcha.
They may not agree on everything related to the criminal justice aspect of it, but everyone wants more tools in the tool belt, including law enforcement, because they are also frustrated by the lack of results. And
Christina Dent, founder and president, End It for Good. Recovery Day at the Capitol this Thursday, January 22nd. Thanks for coming in, Christina.
Thanks so
Appreciate
much.
it. Yeah, we're coming right back in the LMOL studio.
I'm out here on the front lines, sleep in peace tonight.
Hello. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Let's go.
All right, a little Van Halen bumping us into this segment here. Appreciate that, Will. Appreciate Christina coming on. So, interestingly enough, Will, my son is changing careers, still in the account management sales business, tomorrow. And I was just speaking with Christina about it, somewhat related to our discussion. He is going to work for a company who produces what are called long-acting injectables to treat opioid use disorder. He got referred to this company by a friend, an older individual that to him that is in the pharmaceutical industry, knew about this opening. My son Nick went 4 rounds of interviews, competing with other candidates, and ultimately landed the job. And this company's called Indivior. And this is really a whole new just category of drugs that are designed to treat those with this drug addiction. So there's a personal connection here I don't mind talking about. his best friend. Played lots of baseball together, which lots of baseball athletes do strike up friendships, as you can imagine, because they're with each other so much, right? So traveling around and then playing high school together and went to different colleges to play, but still remained friends. Died of an overdose, 28, 5 years ago, 6 years ago now. I delivered eulogy. I coached him, this 13, 14-year-old. And so there's a bit of a connection to it, for my son. I'm still close friends with his father. And, of course, something you never get over. But, maybe this could have helped. And now, some people, unfortunately, are raised in environments that are conducive to becoming a drug addict, unfortunately, because their parents are, right? But there's some that don't just get mixed up. You know how that story goes. Some think it treats their depression for whatever that is. There's a myriad of reasons. I don't pretend to be a psychologist or psychiatrist here whatsoever. I just know that it's a problem in our country, and people get hurt, and people die. And the president understood that. He took action to arrest, if you will, the flow of fentanyl into this country. Because you know that. A lot of those deaths are not, they're accidental in that, they knew they were taking a drug, but it wasn't a drug that was going to kill them. They were seeking a high. They weren't seeking death, as you know. And so I did check that out. Fentanyl deaths in this country down dramatically as a result of the suppression of the flow of those of fentanyl specifically into the country, and I think that's largely because of the president's actions. So I do support that. I don't know about blowing up boats. Honestly, I get it; they're considered narco terrorists. I do think it made sense to capture Maduro because, if for no other reason, because he stole American assets. That's what he did down in Venezuela. And so I think the world is better off with him being out of power. There are all kinds of reports about the president being sort of talked off the ledge to take action in Iran. That's a huge problem, as you know. That's so saddening to watch what's going on with innocent people getting killed, getting slaughtered by an oppressive regime that doesn't care about people, cares more about power and money. But the president apparently backed off on plans to invade and take military action in the country. Now, of course, Greenland's front and center, and somebody on the C Spire text line asked how I felt about that. It was Ben from Madison. Any thoughts on the Greenland situation? Seems like most Republicans in Congress are pushing back on the idea of taking Greenland by force. I think Senator Wicker was one of those. He made a public statement in opposition to it. I certainly understand that our people that are a lot smarter than me, that understand national security issues and risks and challenges and assets needed to secure our country, say that Greenland is strategic. I get that, and I'm not in a position to question them on that. I don't think anybody listening is, honestly. They may think they are, but this is way more complicated. And there's a lot of stuff we just don't know, and we don't need to know. And it would probably compromise our security if we did know, if it were public information. I don't have a problem with that. But I'm not a fan of imperialism, and I'm not in favor of taking military action against Greenland. Now, if this country wants to negotiate a deal with our deal maker in chief president to acquire Greenland, I'm okay with that. What's the population of Greenland? Like 40,000? I mean, it's teeny tiny.
I flew over it once.
Okay.
I saw it from a plane. Was flying from Europe to America, and the pilot comes on and he says, if you look over your right shoulder, and I just so happen to be sitting by the window, there's Greenland.
Yeah.
And so I took a picture of it. It ain't a whole lot there.
It's just a big rock.
And Greenland that's a misnomer. That's a marketing ploy. Okay? The guy back in ancient times wanted to attract people there. You got Iceland over there. So he said, we'll call it Greenland. And people will think that it's nice, green, lush. They can, have farms. No. There's very little. I don't know what the population is, but I didn't see a single building. Now, again, I was way above the sky.
Yep.
But I didn't see any kind of form of life whatsoever. I looked at the picture the other day when all this Greenland talk came up. I didn't see anything.
56,000. That's the population.
And it's a huge piece of land.
In fact, it is the most sparsely populated country on the planet with 0.3 people per square kilometer, and a kilometer is 1.6 miles. That's incredible. The houses are pretty, though. They're very colorful. They kind of try to brighten up the landscape there.
What's the biggest city in Greenland? It's Nuuk, N-U-U-K.
Okay.
The most populous city in Greenland.
Nuuk.
And it is population of 20,000.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it looks very beautiful. But if you look at the map of Greenland, you know, one of those old school maps where the water's blue and, the land, it's surrounded by green, but in the middle of the whole entire thing, it's white.
Yep. Again, cutting a deal, but I'm not for taking the country over if the people don't want to be taken over. I don't. And, so today the president is threatening tariffs against the EU countries that don't support this plan.
Yep.
And that's got the Dow futures down significantly today because it injects instability into the geopolitical landscape. The Dow down, this futures, because it's not open today for MLK Day, Dow down 386, NASDAQ down 280. Oil also ticked up a bit as well. So, and look, the bottom line is investors don't like uncertainty. This is uncertainty. Oh, gosh, more tariffs are coming. And I will say it's probably a good buying opportunity because this will likely blow over and something will come over it. Now, if the president is using that, as he's so good at doing, as a negotiating tactic and tool, okay. And if Greenland says, hey, we want to sell the U.S. and become part of the United States for some amount of money, I'm pretty sure that worked out pretty well for our country in our history. With the Louisiana Purchase and Alaska, well, then that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But I think it's got to be a bilateral agreement, in my view. So I hope that helps, Ben. I'm not sure where you stand, but good question.
Well, let's see. The population's 56,000. We can do the math. We give each one of them, I don't know, what do you think, $100,000?
Yeah, I think that's what they're looking at.
We'll give them each $100,000.
Well, the amount of money that's been floated would make them all millionaires, though. So,
they're probably all for it because I was looking at this the other day. Their biggest industry, their two biggest industries. So, number one, as far as income, is fishing, of course.
Sure.
Number two is subsidies from the government. So they're accustomed to this form of income.
Paula Meridian says the soil is so bad from the glaciers that you can't even plant a garden. Yeah, my understanding is it literally is ice and rock.
Yeah.
Is what it is. More than anything, right? So really fascinating. Let's see what else we got before we go. I think that's it right now. We're going to come back. We got half an hour of middays left. Some more information about this school choice debate under the dome in downtown Jackson. Stay with us.
Now it's on. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income, growth, and guarantees. So, the state has taken over the Wilkinson County School District as what's called by the Department of Education here, a district of transformation. I just got to say, Will, that's kind of a clever, not so bad sounding euphemism for failing school. District in this case. District of transformation. Transforming from what? So to what, right? So, that a lot of the gripes you hear about allowing public dollars to follow a student to a private school under school choice. Well, the private schools don't have any accountability. Okay, well, how about this, Will? We have accountability, right, for public schools. But what are the consequences? What do we do? They fail perennially. What are we doing? Okay, we just marked a grade down failing. But what action are we taking? Now, kudos to the Department of Ed here. They finally said enough with Wilkinson County. So now they're in a state-led district under the supervision of the Mississippi Department of Education. So the county has not, this district, completed an annual financial audit since 2022. It has received a probation accreditation status for 8 of the past 11 years. I mean, we just let it go on year after year. Oh, that's great accountability, isn't it? And was cited for test security violations in 23. Well, that's 3 years ago. So, the board has appointed Lee Coates to serve as Wilkinson County's interim superintendent. Now, he most recently served as assistant superintendent of Holmes County Consolidated School District. I don't have this in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that's not a very well-performing district either. So how much sense does that make? We're going to take a person who's at a very high level in a district that's underperforming and put them in charge of a failing district. So there are other districts of transformation. You ought to know about this one, Will. Noxubee County. Yeah. So Holmes County is one of those under this district of transformation. And we're putting the individual from Holmes County in charge of the new district of transformation. Great accountability there. And look, I don't know this person. They may be fantastic. I'm just saying that, gosh, it seems to me like that you would want someone who is involved with a high-performing district to come in and oversee the transformation of a district that's failing. I'm reminded of one of my favorite authors, Will, a guy named Andy Andrews. Saw him speak twice in my business career, and right before I sold my company, we had him all lined up to come here. He's not cheap, by the way, but what a fabulous speaker this guy is. Andy Andrews. And he tells his life story. It's fascinating about how he lost his whole family at a very young age. But he's kind of I don't want to call him a motivational speaker, but he's known as a storyteller. And his first book, I think, was called The Traveler's Gift. Then he wrote another one called The 7 Decisions to, I can't remember the whole title of the book, but 7 Decisions to basically Success. The Traveler's Gift probably is first. Yeah, Understanding the Keys to Personal Success. But he, I think it's that one, if I'm not mistaken. He says, if you want to succeed in life, find somebody who has at what your endeavor is and understand everything you can about them and emulate them. So he uses the example, you want to stay married? Don't talk to somebody who's had 7 divorces. And he brings up, for the humor element, Johnny Carson, for those of us in my age group, famously remember he was married and remarried and remarried. Liz Taylor,
yeah.
right? So, don't talk to them about how to make your marriage last. Talk to somebody who's been married their whole dang life and never been divorced. That doesn't mean you don't have marital problems. And he also tells that story, Will, some famous celebrity, he never revealed the name, the identity, that invited him to their penthouse, wanted to talk to him, get their counsel. And he says he shows up, goes to this penthouse overlooking Manhattan, very expensive place. Again, high-profile, wealthy celebrity. And they're kind of pacing. Well, I'm sort of hesitant to tell you this, Andy, but I brought you here because I'm having problems in my marriage. And Andy says, I knew that's what it was. He said, how'd you know? He said, because you're married. That's what he said. But all I'm saying here is, can we learn from that? Emulate, follow, learn, understand.
I'm trying to read some more about the success of Holmes County.
Yeah.
According to the Mississippi Free Press, this was an article written about 2 years ago.
Okay.
So apparently the state took it over in 2021.
Okay.
And then a few years later, 3 years after the Mississippi Department of Education took over the district, it achieved an overall B rating.
Okay, good.
For the first time in school history, with 70% of the district schools earning a B rating, including all of its elementary schools.
Awesome. So it could be this individual knows how to turn these things around.
Maybe
so
that's
my
the
apologies.
Case. Yes.
Yeah. So, but I guess what I'm saying is that I'm not 100% confident that the accountability we have, systems we have in place, are acted on with a sense of urgency. And look, I know the superintendent, Lance Evans, who's a really good guy. He could probably help us understand why that is the case. I'm just saying that you can't just take the default position that, hey, government's got accountability systems in place, and that guarantees accountability and produces the best outcomes. That government is better at imposing accountability than consumers are. Mm-hmm. And my point has always been, when individuals, families are able to choose the setting of their choice, the accountability is the family. They will let the market know, you know what, this isn't working out very good for my child here. I got to do something different. That's all I'm saying.
Taking over these school districts is kind of a mixed bag. I mean, there's obviously underlying issues that government, like you said, government's never going to fix. In my home county, Chickasaw County,
yep.
There's a school district there. We have a weird. Used to have 3 school districts in one county. Don't get me started. They eventually consolidated 2 of those, so there's only 2 now. One of which, Okolona, has been taken over multiple times. In fact, I think it was taken over this past year again.
The first, by the way, when it was taken over, it was the first one under the statute that allowed the DOE to take over under this District of Transformation program. Yeah. I'm reading it right here. Okolona was the first.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I think it's twice in 15. So the first time, and then 15 years later, it's back performing poorly again. So they've taken it back over. So it's kind of a mixed bag. There's some other school districts, like we pointed out, Holmes, where it seems to be a little bit more successful. But yeah, but getting back to it, there's underlying issues.
Sure.
And the government ain't going to fix those.
Exactly. And that's the point. There's that just because we have government accountability, that does not guarantee that every district performs at a high level. It just doesn't. There are a million other factors that contribute to that the government can't control. What I do know is that when a student and a family are trapped in a circumstance where they could get out and do better, that we should allow them to do that. And the people that are pushing back on this are essentially saying, nope, you got to be trapped where you are. Sorry, you don't matter. I don't know how to conclude any differently than that. And the argument as well about which seems to be the primary argument, in my view, that we can't let public money be diverted to private schools. I got a thought about that, and get to that on the other side of the break. We got a final segment left. It's a 2-hour show today because it's Monday, middays from the Element Wealth studio. Got a few more texts to get to before we get out of here as well. Thank you.
Up of Mississippi.
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Middays from the Element Wealth studio. So, wanted to pass this on. President Trump said one reason behind his push to acquire Greenland is that he did not win the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yep.
That's according to a message he sent to Norway's prime minister. How about that?
He wants that Peace Prize, that medal, so bad.
Yeah.
You know, you saw the new president or the lady from Venezuela. She's not the new president. The lady from Venezuela who won the Nobel Peace Prize this past time. She gave hers to President Trump. She presented it to him. That's what he wants. I know. He wants that Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, you know, in my view, that's not justification for this action.
He wants it.
I know. He does. Matter of national security, keeping the planet intact, okay. Yeah. I'm for that. But a prize, nah,
I think
I'm
for
sorry.
him sometimes that's an after effect.
I know.
He wants that medal.
Something else we got to pass on that happened over the weekend. I'm sure you saw it, Will, where there were some protesters that showed up in a church during a worship service. And the pastor had to push back on these protesters. And it was ridiculous that this even happened. And it was related to ICE. I don't remember all the connections and the details. There's so much associated with it. But even though Don Lemon from CNN, he got involved in it as well. He said that Jesus would be understanding to ICE protesters storming the church. Here's where I come down on this. They will say, well, it's free speech. Well, when your free speech encroaches on someone else's right under our Constitution to worship as you see fit, well, no, then you've crossed the line. There's nothing about our law that says you're entitled to exercise in accordance with your rights in such a way that infringes on the rights of others. No, that's not the case. It's completely inappropriate to bust up into a church for that purpose. Of course, you know, if the church were harboring a criminal and law enforcement busted up in there to apprehend that criminal, of course, the opposite would occur. You came in a church, right? You know what I'm saying here. This is such a double standard, as Rhino likes to say. The only standards they have are double standard.
And that mayor of Minneapolis, let me tell you.
Oh, my
he's
gosh,
the next
Fry.
Left-wing rock star.
I'm afraid you're right. Can you imagine him and Newsom on the same ticket?
Oh, man. That is a...
We might be headed in that direction. So, back again on the school choice issue, man. The Democrat Party, there's also a legislative, I think it's a legislative black caucus, if I'm not mistaken. I hope I got that right. Mississippi House Democrats, Mississippi Legislative Black Caucus. Yeah, I got that right. So they're voting no, they're promoting their voting no on House Bill 2, the school choice bill that, again, just passed in the House last Thursday by one vote, sent down to the Senate. I don't think it's going anywhere down in the Senate. And that's just based on commentary from Education Chairman Dennis DeBar. He was on the program last week. And not this program, but on the morning show. And numerous other legislators have taken to social media to explain their position. Very much appreciate that. I know this was a tough decision for many of them. I respect the process. I respect their decision. I don't agree. And I reached out to some that are my friends, Will, over the weekend, just letting look, I know we come down on different stances on this, but I respect your vote and your deliberation, and that's it. I'm not going to demean them or threaten them, but people that did vote yes, friends that I know, people I've talked to over the weekend in the legislature, say they are getting beat up by people. We're going to primary you in the next one, all this kind of stuff. Like, okay, fine. I mean, I get it. Look, that's your right in our country under our laws, and that's fantastic. That's the way the system should work. But you probably agree with this person 99.9% of the time, but you don't like this one, and so you're gonna go after them because of that. And then there's also a small. I'm not going to give them the benefit of identifying them, but there's a small town in the state that has a small paper, and the person who runs the paper, they went out to social media and wrote a very long article about it as well. But again, the big objection that I see, Will, is this so-called diversion of public money to the private schools. So I just got to ask, are you okay with the government paying for any private providers of goods and services? We have a little program in the state, Will. It's called Medicaid. It's $7 billion, all of public money. Well, it's not paying government doctors and nurses in government-run hospitals. There are some that are owned by the government, but for the most part, it's private health care providers who are getting paid. They build our roads and bridges. They build ships down at Ingalls for us. Our classrooms and athletic fields are equipped with products made by the private sector. The buildings themselves constructed by the private sector. So I don't get that argument. We're out of time today. We will continue more about this in the coming days. Stay with us then. Have a good one. Stay safe, and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.